So what if I told you that adding a single, like, three-letter word to a sentence is the difference between someone running a quick, harmless errand on a Tuesday afternoon and someone serving 10 years in a maximum security prison?
I mean, it sounds like a riddle, right?
Yeah.
But it's actually a fundamental reality of the language we speak every single day.
Welcome to the deep dive. We are looking at something you probably use, I don't know, thousands of times a day without even a second thought. And honestly, before we got into today's material, if you had asked me to explain the rules behind the words a, an, and the, I probably would have, well, I would have mumbled something about vowels and consonants and then just quickly changed the subject.
Which is exactly what most of us do. We treat these words, the articles, as just linguistic filler,
Yeah, totally.
just sort of packing peanuts we use to pad our sentences so they don't sound like caveman speak.
Right, like me want apple sounds wrong, so we just throw in an and just to be polite. But our guide for this journey completely shatters that illusion. We are pulling from this incredible masterclass by the English grammar expert Tarun Grover. And what he lays out isn't just like a list of spelling rules to memorize for some standardized test.
No, not at all.
It is a profound structural breakdown of how these three tiny words function as the ultimate context setters for our entire reality.
They are precision instruments. They don't just sit passively on the page. They actively manipulate the words around them.
Yeah.
They dictate certainty, they signal ambiguity, and they can completely alter the psychological weight of the noun they're attached to.
While I was going through Grover's breakdown, this analogy just kept popping into my head. Think about a high-end camera, right? Specifically, the manual focus ring on the lens.
Oh, I like that.
Because without that focus ring, you still have a scene in front of you. The subject exists. But the article, the a, an, or the a, is you turning that ring. It tells whoever is looking at the picture exactly what part of the frame they are supposed to care about. It tells you, the listener, whether we're looking at something razor sharp and specific or something intentionally blurred and, generalized.
That camera analogy is the perfect lens, well, no pun intended, for this entire discussion.
Nice.
Because before we can understand how that focus ring operates,
No.
we have to establish what it's actually focusing on.
Right.
In the architecture of the English language, an article cannot exist in a vacuum. It has one master, and one master only, and that's the noun.
It's an absolute guarantee. You cannot have an article without a noun. They are completely tethered together.
Yes.
If you, as a listener, hear the word the, your brain is instantly making a subconscious calculation that a noun is coming down the track.
Exactly. But to understand the nuance of how the focus ring works, we first need to quickly survey the landscape of the nouns themselves. Grover categorizes nouns into 5 distinct types,
Okay.
and how the article interacts with them is going to change based on which type we're dealing with.
Okay, let's map the territory. What are the 5?
First, we have proper nouns. These are highly specific names. Rahul, Mumbai, Mount Everest.
Right, the big ones.
Second, common nouns.
Yeah.
These are your broad categories: a boy, a doctor, a city.
Got it.
Third, collective nouns, which represent unified groups, like an army, a jury, or a sports team.
And then we get into the ones that are a little harder to, hold in your hand. Abstract nouns.
Right. Feelings, concepts, ideas, love, honesty, hatred, things you cannot physically touch.
Yeah.
And finally, material nouns, which represent raw substances: gold, water, iron.
Now, I know what you're thinking if you're listening to this. You're probably like, okay, I learned this in the 4th grade. Why does this actually matter?
Yeah.
But it matters because of a massive structural rule that dictates how we build sentences. It's the positioning rule. And frankly, when I read this part, I actually had to stop and draw it out on a piece of paper to really get it.
It's deceptive in its simplicity. The rule states that the article always, without exception, stays at the absolute front of the noun phrase, regardless of how many modifiers you cram in between the article and the noun.
Okay, let's play this out so we can visualize the mechanics here. Let's start with a common noun, just the word dancer.
Okay.
If I want to introduce this concept, I put my article in front, a dancer. Very straightforward. The article a is standing right next to dancer, shining its spotlight directly on it.
Correct. The focus ring is dialed in.
But then I start adding descriptors, right? I add an adjective. I say a good dancer.
Yes.
And then I want to get even more descriptive, so I add an adverb. I say a very good dancer.
Right. Wait, so let me stop right there and challenge this. If I read that sentence left to right, the word a is physically attached to the word very.
Visually, yes.
So why wouldn't a computer parsing that sentence assume that the article belongs to the adverb? How does the structural integrity hold up across all those words?
Because of the inherent hierarchy of the English sentence. This is where we have to realize that not all words are created equal.
The noun in this case, dancer, is the undisputed monarch of that sentence fragment.
The king.
Exactly. The adjectives, like good, and the adverbs like very, are essentially just temporary clothing.
Oh, that's interesting.
They describe the current state of the noun, but they don't define its fundamental existence.
Okay, I like that. The noun is the person, the adjectives are just the jacket and the hat they happen to be wearing that day.
Precisely. And the article is the anchor. It's the royal herald blowing the trumpet to announce the arrival of the king.
That's a great image.
No matter how long the procession's ahead of the king, the incredibly, the spectacularly, that article standing at the very front of the line is blowing its horn solely for the noun all the way at the back.
Right.
It proves that the article's grammatical allegiance bypasses the temporary clothing and locks strictly onto the core identity of the noun.
Which means, from a psychological perspective, as speakers, our brains are constantly doing advanced algebra in real time.
They really are.
If I am talking to you and I start a sentence with the word a, my brain already knows what the final noun is going to be, even if I haven't figured out which 4 adjectives I'm going to use to describe it yet.
It is a remarkable cognitive feat.
Yeah.
You are placing the anchor before you've even built the ship.
Okay, so the article belongs strictly to the noun. That is our structural blueprint. But this immediately leads us into a massive paradox.
The phonetic paradox.
Yeah, and easily the most misunderstood rule we're covering today. We are moving from the structure on the page to the physical sound in the air. The infinite debate, when to use a versus when to use an.
This is the trap almost everyone falls into because they are relying on their eyes to do the job of their ears.
Right. Look, I remember my elementary school teacher drilling this into my head. It was just a visual formula.
The vowel rule.
Exactly. If the next word starts with a consonant, you use a. If the next word starts with a vowel, a, e, I, o, u, you use an. An apple, an elephant, a ball, a cat.
It seems so simple.
It seemed like ironclad math. But this masterclass completely dismantles that. Spelling has absolutely nothing to do with it.
Zero. The written letters on the page are entirely irrelevant to this rule. The distinction between a and an is 100% governed by phonetic sound.
It's wild.
It's a sonic illusion.
Let's break this down, because this is where the English language feels like it's actively trying to trick us. In linguistics, and Grover points this out beautifully using the Hindi framework, there is a strict difference between vyanjan, which are consonant sounds, and swar, which are vowel sounds.
Right.
It's the sound that dictates the article, not the ink on the page. A is for consonant sounds, and is for vowel sounds. So where are the traps?
The first major trap involves words that start with a written vowel, but actually produce a consonant sound when spoken.
Give me an example.
The classic example is the word university.
Right. Visually, it starts with a U. Every instinct tells you vowel, use an.
But pay close attention to what your mouth is physically doing when you say that word, university.
You.
The very first phonetic sound is a hard Y. That Y sound is a consonant. Therefore, grammatically and phonetically, it must be a university.
Wow.
If you write a university on a resume, a hiring manager's brain will stumble over it, even if they can't articulate exactly why.
It just feels wrong. It's the same with the word European. Starts with an E, but your mouth makes a Y sound. A European.
Exactly.
But my absolute favorite trap from the material is the phrase, a one-eyed man.
That one perfectly illustrates the illusion.
It really does. Because it starts with an O. You see an O, you think vowel. But say it out loud. One.
You're starting with a W sound.
Right. A one-eyed man. Not a one-eyed man.
Now, let's flip the trap around. We also have words that start with a written consonant but produce a vowel sound. Let's look at abbreviations, which are notorious for this.
Okay.
Take a political title like MLA.
Member of Legislative Assembly. Starts with an M, visual consonant.
But when you pronounce the acronym, you don't make an M sound.
Yeah.
You say MLA. The very first sound exiting your lips is A, which is a pure vowel sound. Consequently, it requires the article an. He is an MLA.
What about words with silent letters, like our, H-O-U-R?
The H is completely silent. Your vocal cords engage on the ow sound.
Which is a vowel sound.
Right, therefore an hour. Same with an heir to a fortune. You are visually breaking the rule you learned in school to obey a much deeper biological rule.
Wait, hold on. Biology. If this is just about airflow, why do we even have these two different words?
That's a million-dollar question.
Why did the language evolve to have an A and an A? And if it's just going to confuse people writing it down, why not just spell it however we want if the body is going to correct it anyway?
That is the core of it. We have to remember that human beings were speaking for tens of thousands of years before we ever picked up a stylus or a pen to standardize grammar.
Right. Spoken language came first.
Language is not a mathematical construct. It is a physical, biological act. The dictionary didn't invent these rules. The dictionary merely attempted to document the physical habits of the human vocal tract.
So A versus an is basically an anatomical workaround.
Exactly. Think about what happens inside your throat when you try to say two vowel sounds back to back without a consonant to break them up. Try saying a apple.
A apple. Yeah, there's a weird, awkward pause. I can feel a sort of click in the back of my throat. It feels like my speech is stalling out.
That click you feel is called a glottal stop. Your vocal cords literally have to slam shut and immediately reopen to separate the two vowel sounds so they don't smear together into a single unintelligible noise.
Wow.
It takes physical effort. It interrupts the smooth flow of breath. Human beings are inherently efficient or lazy, depending on how you look at it.
Usually lazy.
We want the air to flow smoothly. So organically, over generations of spoken language, we inserted a consonant sound, the N, to act as a bridge. An apple.
The air just flows without interruption.
The rule serves the physical comfort of your vocal tract, not a textbook.
That completely reframes how I think about grammar. It's not a rule, it's a reflex. But wait, let me push back on this because we just established a structural rule 5 minutes ago that feels like it totally contradicts this.
Go ahead.
We agreed that the article is the anchor, right? And its allegiance is strictly to the noun at the end of the phrase.
All right.
The spotlight skips over the adjectives, so let's say my noun is question. Starts with a K sound, consonant. So it's a question. The spotlight is locked. But what if I slide the adjective important right in between them?
This is where we encounter the proximity rule.
Because if the article belongs to question, it should stay A, right? A important question. But that creates the glottal stop we just talked about. A important, it chokes.
Precisely. And this is where biology overrides structural allegiance. It feels like a contradiction, but it's actually a hierarchy of needs.
Okay, explain that.
Grammar dictates the structural allegiance, but biology dictates the immediate execution. The article is like a linguistic chameleon. It still fundamentally belongs to the noun question, but it is forced to change its color, its sound, based on the word it is standing immediately next to.
So it adapts to its environment in real time. Because it's standing next to the I in important, it has to become an important question just to survive the vocal journey out of my mouth.
Exactly. And if you add an adverb,
Like very.
right, if you say, "and very important question," the environment has changed again. The immediate neighbor is now a consonant V sound.
So the chameleon changes back.
Yes, it becomes a very important question. The allegiance to the noun never wavered, but the physical form adapted to the immediate proximity.
That is so incredibly fluid. If you were typing a message on your phone right now and you delete a word, your brain is subconsciously reevaluating the phonetic landscape of the entire sentence to figure out if the article needs to shapeshift.
Millions of times a day, without a drop of conscious effort.
Okay, so we've mastered the structural blueprint. We know the noun is king. We've mastered the physical sound, navigating the traps of Vyanjan and Swar. Now, let's zoom out. Let's look at how A and an actually manipulate the reality we are describing to the listener.
Yes, this is the fun part.
This brings us into what we can call the art of the indefinite. How do these tiny words handle uncertainty?
This is where we cross the bridge from the mechanics of speaking into the psychology of meaning. Indefinite articles a and an are designed to denote something that cannot be specifically defined, or something that the speaker is intentionally leaving vague.
Right.
It is the language of the unknown.
Let's use a real-world example from the material. A dog was barking at night. If I say that to you over coffee, what am I actually communicating beneath the surface?
You're setting a scene, but withholding details.
Exactly. I am telling you an event occurred, yes, but I am intentionally leaving the specific identity of the actor completely blank. I am creating a space of anonymity.
It could be your neighbor's dog.
It could be a stray. The A tells you the specific identity doesn't matter to the story.
And this anonymity is a crucial tool for how human beings share information. It brings us to the first introduction rule.
Oh, this makes so much sense.
Whenever you are telling a story or writing a report, and you introduce a singular countable noun for the very first time, it almost universally takes an a or an. You are bringing a new, unknown element onto the stage of the listener's mind.
A man walked into the room.
Exactly. You are signaling, here is a new variable.
Right.
But the moment you have introduced him, the dynamic shifts. He has crossed the threshold. He is no longer a mystery. He is now a shared reality between you and me.
So the very next time you refer to him, the article must evolve. The man looked angry.
Wow. So the progression from A to the is literally a timeline of our shared knowledge. It tracks the listener's journey from ignorance to familiarity.
You couldn't start the story with the man walked into the room unless I already knew exactly which man you were talking about.
Right. It would feel incredibly jarring, like you walked into the middle of a movie.
But Grover's breakdown details an even more fascinating manipulation of reality using the indefinite article, and that's the unknown proper noun.
This one is brilliant because it feels so passive-aggressive.
It really is. This is where you take an indefinite article, a tool of mystery, and you intentionally attach it to someone's actual specific name.
Let's set the scene. Structurally, a proper noun, like Mr. Khanna, is already highly specific. It designates a singular human being. It doesn't need an article to define it.
Right.
If you work at a front desk and you know the person walking in, you simply call your boss and say, Mr. Khanna's here to see you.
But the material introduces the phrasing, a Mr. Khanna wants to talk to you.
Now, analyze the psychological shift there. By placing that A in front of his name, what are you doing?
I am basically stripping him of his identity. I'm turning him into a mystery box.
You are weaponizing grammar to signal your own ignorance, or perhaps your suspicion.
Suspicion, yeah.
A Mr. Khanna is here translates roughly to, there is a human being standing in front of me who claims his name is Mr. Khanna. However, I have absolutely no idea who he is, I cannot verify his identity, and I am certainly not vouching for his importance.
It creates instant psychological distance. It's the grammatical equivalent of holding someone at arm's length.
Exactly.
It's like saying a so-called Mr. Khanna,
Yeah.
and all it took was one single letter. If you are writing an email to a colleague and you say, a John Smith called for you, you are subtly telling your colleague, I don't know who this guy is.
Yeah.
It changes the entire social dynamic.
And we can push that manipulation even further. This brings us to a concept called proper to common noun conversion.
Oh, this is fantastic.
This is where we use the indefinite article to completely dissolve a person's unique identity and turn them into a broad category.
Let's talk about the Salman Khan archetype. Let's say I'm at my local gym. There's a guy there. He's got the bulging biceps. He's wearing an impossibly tight t-shirt. He's got a Bollywood action movie soundtrack blasting in his headphones. And he's strutting around the weight rack like he owns the building.
We all know the type.
Right. I can lean over to my friend, point at him and say, look at this guy. He thinks he's a Salman Khan.
What is fascinating here is the alchemy you've just performed. You took a singular, unique, living human being, the actual actor Salman Khan, and by slapping an indefinite article in front of his name, you destroyed his singularity.
Erased him.
You turned him into a template, a replicable archetype.
I generalized him. I extracted his specific essence, the muscles, the attitude, the swagger, and I turned it into a bucket. And now I'm dropping my gym buddy right into that bucket.
Precisely. You see this constantly in literature and pop culture. If you have a neighbor who is incredibly greedy, demanding every last penny you owe them, you might refer to them as a Shylock, pulling from Shakespeare's Merchant of Venice.
Or in modern slang, companies constantly try to be the Uber of something.
Wait, let's pause on that. If a company says they are an Uber for dog walking, they're doing exactly this, right? They're taking a proper noun, the company Uber, and using the article to turn it into a common noun that means app-based, on-demand service.
That is a perfect modern application of the rule. It proves that grammar isn't just a set of arbitrary rules for writing academic papers.
No.
It is a highly active tool we use to bend meaning, to categorize the world, and to establish power dynamics between concepts.
It is incredibly powerful. And it doesn't just work on people or companies, it even works on actions. The material points out phrases like have a walk or have a talk.
Now, walk and talk are verbs. They describe fluid motion, they describe actions occurring over time, but the moment we drop an A in front of them,
We freeze the action in time. We turn the verb into a noun.
we package it. The fluid, continuous motion of walking becomes a distinct, bounded event, a walk. It becomes an object that you can possess. You can have a walk the same way you can have an apple.
It objectifies the experience, giving it a beginning, a middle, and an end.
Okay, so if A and an are our Swiss Army knives for mystery, generalization, and turning the specific into the unknown, We need to turn the focus ring the other way.
Time to look at the definite article.
Exactly. The. If A is the fog, the is the laser beam. It is the ultimate tool of specificity.
And just like our indefinite articles, the has its own phonetic secret that most speakers utilize perfectly without ever really realizing it.
The pronunciation, this completely caught me off guard. We write it T-H-E every single time. It never changes on the page. But out loud, we pronounce it two entirely different ways.
We do.
The masterclass clarifies that the is pronounced with a harsh I sound like da when it comes before a consonant sound. Da house, da car.
Right.
But it is pronounced with a sharp E sound like D when it comes before a vowel sound. D apple, D umbrella.
It all routes back to the biological imperative we discussed earlier, the physical comfort of the vocal tract. Consider the mechanics. D ends with an E sound, which is a pure vowel. Yeah, E. When that E sound flows immediately into another vowel, like the A in apple, your mouth naturally creates a tiny, almost imperceptible Y glide to bridge the gap.
D apple.
Exactly. That microglide prevents the awkward glottal stop. Your body naturally adjusts the pronunciation of a word just to keep the air flowing smoothly over your vocal cords.
It's amazing how much subconscious work our bodies are doing just to keep a conversation going. But beyond the biological pronunciation, let's get into the core psychological function of the.
Its primary function is to point to something that is already defined, already known, or already established in the shared reality of the speaker and the listener.
Right.
Returning to your earlier example, if you say, "This is the car I bought," you aren't talking about the abstract concept of transportation, and you aren't talking about any random car on the street. You are locking onto a highly specific object.
The focus ring is dialed all the way in, the background is blurred out, and only the subject is in focus. But what fascinated me the most in the source material were the exceptions. The places where the dia behaves in ways that seem entirely counterintuitive until you understand the underlying philosophy.
Like geography.
Yes. Let's look at the rules of geography. This blew my mind.
Geography provides some of the best examples of how articles define our worldview.
Okay, let's talk about mountains. According to the rules, we must use the for mountain ranges. The Himalayas, the Alps, the Rockies.
Right.
But we are strictly forbidden from using the for individual mountain peaks. You can never say the Mount Everest, you just say Mount Everest. Now, why? What is the logic there? Why does a mountain range get the spotlight, but the tallest mountain on Earth doesn't?
Because it reveals a fascinating philosophical distinction in how human beings categorize the natural world.
Yeah.
Think about what a mountain range actually is.
It's a bunch of mountains.
Right. The Himalayas are a collective. They are a vast, sprawling, plural entity made up of thousands of individual parts. When we use the, it acts as a binding agent.
A binding agent.
It draws a conceptual lasso around all those disparate peaks and groups them together into one singular, recognizable geographic feature.
It creates a unity out of chaos.
Exactly. But Mount Everest is singular. It is a proper noun standing entirely on its own. It doesn't need a linguistic lasso to group it because it has no constituent parts in that sense.
Ah, you see.
Its identity is already absolute and singular. Therefore, adding the would be redundant.
That makes total sense. It's like the difference between talking about the basketball team versus talking about Michael Jordan.
That's a perfect analogy.
The team needs the article to bind the players together. Michael Jordan stands alone. But let me push back on this geographic logic. What about bodies of water? If a mountain range gets the, what about a group of lakes?
Following the logic of the collective, you would use the for a group of lakes, like the Great Lakes.
Right.
But you would omit it for an individual lake, like Lake Superior.
Okay, so the logic absolutely holds. But then we move from geography to literature, and the logic takes a very different, almost aggressive turn.
Literature rules are fascinating.
Let's talk about holy books and epic texts.
Universally recognized texts generally take the definite article. We say the Ramayana, the Bible, the Iliad.
Because they're definite.
Yes, they are definite, singular entities in our cultural consciousness.
However, there is a massive exception that feels like a linguistic turf war. The moment you attach the author's name to the title of the work, the article "the" completely vanishes.
Right.
You say the Ramayana, but if you specify the author, you must say Valmiki's Ramayana. You can never say Valmiki's the Ramayana.
Let's analyze why that happens.
Yeah.
From a strict grammatical standpoint, the possessive noun Valmiki's is acting as a determiner.
Okay.
It is already doing the heavy lifting of specifying which version of the text we are discussing. Adding the on top of it would be grammatical redundancy.
But conceptually, it feels like a rule about claiming ownership. It's like the book belongs to the public domain, so society uses the as a placeholder.
Yeah.
But the moment Valmiki shows up and puts his name on the cover, he claims it. The author's name is the ultimate specific marker, and it just kicks the article right out of the sentence.
That is a very astute, dynamic way to look at it. The possessive noun absolutely overtakes the definite article in the hierarchy of specificity.
The creator always trumps the generic article.
Exactly.
It's a power struggle in the syntax. Okay, let's look at another arena where the flexes incredible power nationalities versus languages. If you want to see how a single three-letter word can redraw the map of human culture, this is it.
This is undoubtedly one of the most vital distinctions in the English language, and getting it wrong can completely alter the meaning of a sentence.
The rule is this: if you use the word English on its own, without any article, you are referring strictly and exclusively to the language. I speak English. She is learning English.
Correct. But the moment you place the definite article in front of it, the English, you are no longer talking about vocabulary, syntax, or grammar.
You're not talking about language anymore.
No. You are talking about a physical demographic. You're talking about the citizens of England.
By adding one tiny word, a concept transforms from an invisible, abstract medium of communication into a physical population with passports, borders, and a government.
It's quite the leap.
French is a language you hear. The French are a people you can meet.
It demonstrates how deeply our sociological structures are embedded in our grammar.
So let me ask a clarifying question. What if I want to be highly specific about the language? What if someone hands me a document in Spanish and I want them to convert it? Can I say, translate this into the English?
No, and this is where the language is incredibly rigid. If you want to use the definite article the in conjunction with the specific language, you must explicitly add an anchor word to clarify your intent.
An anchor word.
You have to literally add the word language. You can say the English language.
Or the material points out you can use a verb that forces the context, like the word translate.
Yes. Translate this into the English sounds wrong. To translate into the Hindi language is acceptable because the noun language absorbs the article.
Right.
Without those specific anchor words, saying the Hindi or the English, technically implies you are asking someone to translate a document into a demographic group of people, which is nonsensical.
It is wild how violently the syntax separates the culture from the communication. It keeps them in entirely separate conceptual buckets, all governed by three letters.
Yes.
Which leads us perfectly into the next major concept, metaphorical grammar.
This is where we transition from using articles to define physical objects and demographics to using them to manipulate abstract thoughts and relationships.
We've seen how the B points to the specific car or the specific mountain, but let's look at a structural trick the material calls nouns and apposition. First off, break down that term for me.
Apposition is a grammatical mechanism. It occurs when two distinct nouns, which refer to the exact same person or object, are placed side by side in a sentence to clarify each other.
The masterclass uses this example. Tagore, the poet, was famous. We have Tagore, which is a proper noun. And right next to it, separated by commas, we have poet, which is a common noun. They are the exact same human being.
When this grammatical mirroring happens, the definite article the is almost universally deployed in front of the second noun to lock in the relationship. Tagore, the poet.
It links them.
It acts as a mathematical equal sign. It tells the listener, these two words, despite being entirely different categories of nouns, are fundamentally identical in this specific context.
It elevates the common noun. The word poet could mean millions of people, but by putting the in front of it and placing it in apposition to Tagore, you elevate poet to the same extreme level of specificity as the proper noun.
It acts as a linguistic magnifying glass, focusing the listener's attention on one specific facet of the proper noun's identity.
Let's play a game with this because I want to make sure I grasp the mechanics. What if I remove the commas? What if I don't say Steve, comma, the accountant, comma, is here? What if I just say Steve the accountant is here? Does the rule still apply?
That is an excellent question.
Yeah.
You are touching on the difference between non-restrictive and restrictive clauses.
Okay, grammar terms. Break it down.
With commas, Steve the accountant, the title is extra information. You are assuming I already know who Steve is.
Right.
Without commas, Steve the accountant, the title becomes restrictive. It is essential information. You are telling me, out of all the Steves in the world, I am specifically talking about the one who does taxes.
That makes perfect sense.
But in both cases, the definite article the serves the same core function. It locks the common noun accountant directly to the specific identity of the proper noun, Steve.
It binds them together. Okay, so that's how we compare a person to a profession. But what happens when we compare two massive proper nouns to each other? We talked earlier about using a to compare a person to a famous archetype, like a Salman Khan.
Yes.
But the rule changes for geography. The example given is Mumbai is the London of India.
Notice the critical shift in the article used here. We are not saying Mumbai is a London. We are saying it is the London.
Right. If I said Mumbai is a London, I'd just be saying it's a big, rainy city with a lot of people. It's vague.
But when you place the definite article the in front of the benchmark being used for comparison London, you are establishing a definitive one-to-one equivalence in status.
You are making a much stronger, almost arrogant claim. You are saying Mumbai holds the exact same pinnacle status in India's financial and cultural ecosystem that London holds globally.
Exactly.
It's not just sharing traits, it is occupying the exact same conceptual throne.
The article elevates the comparison from a passing similarity to an absolute structural equivalence. But perhaps the most poetic and psychologically complex use of the definite article is a process the masterclass refers to as extracting the abstract.
This part blew me away. I had to read it 3 times. This is where grammar literally becomes philosophy.
It really does.
You can take a totally standard physical common noun, place the in front of it, and completely change its state of matter. You can vaporize a physical person into an invisible feeling.
Let's use the example of the word father. By definition, father is a common noun. It represents a biological role. It is a physical human being walking around in the world.
Right. My father is a guy.
But look at this sentence construction. When I saw the crying child on the street, the father in me woke up.
Right. Now, I am obviously not saying a literal tiny man woke up inside my stomach.
No. In this highly specific metaphorical construction, the definite article acts as an emotional extractor. It reaches into the noun and pulls the absolute essence out of it.
The essence.
The father, in this sentence, no longer refers to a man. It refers exclusively to the abstract emotion of paternal love, the instinct to protect, the parental drive.
It extracts the soul of the word. You are separating the emotion from the biology. The source material uses an even darker, more intense example to prove this point. The animal in you made you commit the crime. Let's dissect this, because the psychological heavy lifting here is staggering.
Consider the alternative. If you say to someone, you are an animal.
Without the thush, just an animal.
Yes, you are delivering a literal insult. You are calling them a beast. You are attacking their entire identity.
But if I say it was the animal in you, utilizing the definite article,
you have completely changed the nature of the critique. You are no longer calling them a beast. You are isolating a specific primitive behavioral instinct deep inside their psyche, and you are critiquing that isolated instinct.
wow.
You have separated the human being from the primal urge.
That is a massive conceptual leap. And it is entirely achieved by a 3-letter word. The animal becomes an invisible psychological force rather than a physical insult. It's incredibly nuanced.
And this nuanced interaction between the definite article and our physical being extends beyond metaphors into literal anatomy. Consider the rules governing diseases and body parts.
Right, let's look at that. The general rule is that body parts require the definite article when we are discussing an action that affects them. If someone gets injured, we say, he was hit on the head.
Right.
We don't say he was hit on the head because it's not random. It is a specific known entity belonging to that specific person.
The location is definitively mapped.
But when we move to discussing diseases, the specificity gets dialed up even further. We often just say someone has a disease generally, he has cancer. No article.
Yeah.
But if we want to be clinically precise about the anatomy, the article reappears to lock in the coordinates.
Cancer of the lung, cancer of the throat.
The article there acts like a geographical pin on an MRI scan. It says, the disease is located in this exact, definitive, undeniable territory. It removes all ambiguity.
So we have spent this entire conversation looking at how we deploy these tiny tools, how we add a, and the T, to sentences, to shine spotlights, to build mystery, to create archetypes, to establish equivalence, and to extract emotions.
They are undoubtedly the hardest working, most agile words in the dictionary.
But this brings us to the final act of our deep dive.
Yeah.
And this might be the most profound part of the entire masterclass.
Okay.
Because we are about to learn that the ultimate mastery of articles is not knowing where to put them or how to pronounce them. The ultimate mastery is knowing when they must be completely, utterly erased.
The philosophy of omission. This is where we explore the immense power of grammatical silence. When does the language demand that we say nothing at all?
The material outlines very specific scenarios where the article simply vanishes. Let's start with the biggest one, general truths.
Okay, let's hear.
We were talking about massive, overarching concepts. Words like man, woman, nature, life, death, and science.
The big ones.
When these concepts are spoken of in their broadest, most universal sense, when we were discussing the very nature of existence, they reject all articles. They stand alone.
Give me the examples so we can, hear the silence.
Man is mortal. Death is inevitable. Science has changed the world.
Let's play with those and put the articles back in to see how it ruins the meaning. If I say the man is mortal, suddenly I'm not talking about humanity. I'm talking about one specific guy, maybe a mob boss or a government agent.
Exactly. The concept shrinks instantly.
If I say a death is inevitable, I'm no longer talking about the universal philosophical concept of mortality. I'm talking about one single isolated tragic event.
Exactly. By purposefully omitting the article, you are signaling to the listener that you're speaking in absolutes. You are dealing with the foundational fabric of reality itself.
Wow.
Any article, definite or indefinite, would act as a container, shrinking the infinite concept down to a manageable, specific, and ultimately smaller size. The omission is what allows the word to remain infinite.
The word gets to fill the entire room because there is no article keeping it trapped in a box.
Yeah.
I absolutely love that visual. Dropping the article altogether is like taking the lens off our camera entirely. You aren't looking at a specific subject anymore. You're just capturing the raw, unfiltered light of a universal truth.
That is a beautiful way to synthesize it. But the most crucial and frankly the most mind-bending point regarding omission is what we can label the real purpose rule.
Yes. This is the payoff to the riddle I asked at the very beginning of the episode. This rule fundamentally changes how I hear everyday conversations.
It is a rule that governs how our grammar interacts with the foundational physical institutions of our societies, schools, colleges, markets, jails, churches, and hospitals.
Okay, lay the mechanics of this out for me because it is incredibly specific.
The rule dictates these specific institutional locations take absolutely no article whatsoever if the person going there is going for the primary intended purpose of that institution.
Let's ground this with concrete examples. If I am a 15-year-old student and I am waking up on a Tuesday morning, I say to my parents, I am going to school. I do not use an article.
Right.
If a criminal is convicted of a felony by a judge, the news report will read, the robbers were sent to jail. No article.
Exactly.
If someone suffers a severe heart attack in a restaurant, the paramedics will say the patient was admitted to hospital. No article.
Look at the common thread in all three of those scenarios. In every single case, the human being is engaging with the institution exactly as society designed it to be used.
They're playing the role.
Yes. The student is receiving an education, the criminal is receiving punishment, the patient is receiving medical treatment.
They're playing their assigned roles in the societal machine. But the rule flips on its head with what we can call the secondary purpose rule.
This is where it gets interesting.
You only deploy the definite article in front of these places if you are going there for a completely different reason outside of the institution's primary design.
Precisely. Let's revisit the exact same locations. If you are a parent and you are driving across town to speak with the principal because your child got in trouble, you are not a student.
Yeah.
Therefore, you do not say, I am going to school. You must say, I am going to the school.
The article appears.
If a government official is conducting a health and safety inspection of a penitentiary, he is not a prisoner serving time. Therefore, he is not visiting jail, he is visiting the jail.
Right.
If you are perfectly healthy and you are just dropping off a bouquet of flowers for your sick friend, you are not a patient. You are going to the hospital.
This is so profound. If I am doing what I'm supposed to be doing, if I am a gear turning correctly inside the machine, the article is completely invisible. I am part of the system.
You are the system.
But if I'm stepping into a foreign ecosystem, if I'm a parent in a classroom, an inspector in a prison block, a healthy person in a trauma ward, it acts like a giant neon visitor's badge.
It is exactly like a visitor's badge. Let's dive deep into the profound sociological logic underpinning this grammatical quirk.
I'm ready.
Language, at its absolute core, is an evolutionary system of supreme efficiency. It is designed to transfer information with as little friction as possible. Therefore, it refuses to waste energy explaining the expected.
Right, it only flags the anomalies.
Exactly. When things are functioning exactly as society expects them to function, a patient suffering in a hospital bed, a student studying at a desk, that is the default state of our shared reality.
The baseline.
The language requires zero extra decoration to explain that relationship. The naked noun alone, hospital, school, is enough to convey the entire complex social contract to the listener. The baseline is assumed.
But language must be agile enough to warn us when the baseline is broken.
And that is when the definite article is deployed. The brellas is used to signal a deviation from the norm. It operates as a linguistic alarm bell.
Wow.
It tells the listener, pay attention. The person I'm talking about is interacting with this foundational institution in an unorthodox, temporary, or external way.
It is wild to think that we process all of this dense sociological context in the space of a single syllable. And it brings us right back to our opening hook. If someone tells you their brother went to jail, you offer condolences.
Right.
If they tell you their brother went to the jail, you ask if the traffic was bad.
It perfectly reveals that grammar is not just a set of arbitrary, dusty rules handed down by academics in ivory towers. Grammar is a living mirror.
It reflects us.
It reflects exactly how we organize our society, how we manage our expectations, and how we construct our shared reality.
Okay, let's take a deep breath and look back at the massive landscape we've just covered. We started with the basic architectural blueprint, realizing that nouns are the undisputed kings of the sentence.
And articles are the loyal spotlights.
Right, shining right past whatever temporary adjective clothing the noun happens to be wearing.
We then ventured into the phonetic reality of a versus an, discovering that spoken language ultimately serves the physical biology of our throats.
Forcing our words to adapt like chameleons to avoid the dreaded glottal stop.
We explored the incredible psychological power of the indefinite article.
Seeing how A can strip a person of their identity to become a Mr. Kana, or how it can extract the essence of a celebrity to create a universal archetype.
Or even freeze a fluid verb into a packaged event, like a walk.
We then dialed in our focus ring with the definite article, unpacking how the dictates ownership in epic literature.
It redraws the borders between languages and nationalities.
And it elevates comparisons to absolute equivalencies.
We ventured into metaphorical grammar, learning how to extract the abstract soul of a word to critique the animal in you.
Before finally arriving at the profound power of omission, where taking the lens off the camera entirely speaks volumes about our universal truths and societal norms.
It is truly staggering how much conceptual weight these three tiny words carry on their shoulders.
And that brings us to the end of our deep dive today. But as always, we don't want to just leave you with a list of grammatical trivia to forget by tomorrow morning. We want to leave you with something to really chew on as you navigate the rest of your week.
I want you to think about how deeply, fundamentally programmed our brains are. To understand these invisible rules, even if you could never explicitly articulate them before listening today.
Yeah, think about the profound emotional chasm between two nearly identical phrases.
The smallest words in our language do not merely describe the reality we live in, they actively, aggressively dictate it. They frame our social hierarchies, our fears, our respect, and our understanding of what is normal.
So, as you go out into the world today, listen to the conversations happening around you. Pay attention to the emails you write. Listen to the news anchors. Listen to yourself.
Notice the articles.
If a three-letter word can decide if someone is an inmate or a visitor, what other tiny, invisible assumptions is your brain making about the words you hear every single day?
The language is always speaking to us, constantly revealing its secrets, usually in the microscopic spaces between the words we actually think matter.
Until next time, keep listening closely, keep questioning the defaults, and keep diving deep.